My favorite time of year was always the Christmas season in our little town of Pine Brook. The air smelled like pine trees and wood smoke. Every house on my street would glow with colorful lights. The local shops put wreaths on their doors. It was a feeling of pure magic that I carried in my heart from my own childhood. I loved everything about it, especially the big Christmas parade. It was the event that kicked off our holiday celebrations. The whole town would line Main Street, drinking cocoa and cheering. For me, it was the start of the most wonderful time of the year. I thought my sister, Brittany, felt the same way. Brittany was my older sister. We had always been close, or so I believed. But as adults, things felt different. Brittany loved the idea of a perfect Christmas. Everything had to be just so. Her tree was like a magazine picture. Her gifts were always the biggest and most expensive under the tree. She would talk for months about what Santa was bringing her kids. It felt less about joy and more about showing off. I tried to ignore it because she was my sister. I loved my niece and nephew dearly. I just wanted to be part of their holiday happiness, not part of a competition I never agreed to join. That particular year, things were tight for me. My car needed a major repair in the fall. I had to use my savings to fix it. I knew I couldn't afford the fancy electronics Brittany's kids were asking for. It broke my heart. I decided to give them gifts from the heart instead. I spent weeks knitting soft scarves for them. I filled beautiful baskets with homemade cookies and hot chocolate mix. I wrote each of them a long, personal letter about how much I loved them. I wrapped everything with care and delivered the presents to Brittany's house a week before Christmas. I handed the gifts to my niece and nephew with a smile. Their eyes were wide with excitement. Brittany watched from the kitchen doorway, her arms crossed. The kids tore open the paper. They loved the scarves and immediately put them on. They were excited about the cookies. But I saw Brittany's face. It was a cold, hard mask. She didn't say a word. The kids hugged me and said thank you. I felt a wave of relief. Maybe it would be okay. I handed Brittany her own special basket. She took it without a smile. The air in the room felt suddenly heavy and still. After the kids went upstairs to play, Brittany turned to me. Her voice was a sharp whisper. "This is what you give them? Scarves? Cookies? Do you know what they asked Santa for?" They wanted real gifts. I tried to explain about my car trouble and my savings. I told her the gifts were made with love. She cut me off. "Love doesn't fill a Christmas morning," she said. She shoved her own unopened basket back into my hands. Then she turned and walked into the kitchen. I stood there alone in her living room, holding the basket. I finally left, my eyes burning with tears I refused to let fall. The next week was agony. Brittany didn't answer my calls or texts. I tried to tell myself she just needed time to cool off. Then, one evening, my phone rang. It was my 7-year-old niece, Lily. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her. My heart immediately started to race. I thought something terrible had happened. "Lily, sweetheart, what's wrong?" I asked, trying to sound calm. She took a shaky breath. Between sobs, she whispered words that would change everything for me. Her voice was so small and so very scared. "Aunt Paige," Lily whispered into the phone. "I have to tell you a secret. Mommy said I shouldn't call you." I urged her gently to tell me. She took another ragged breath. Mommy said Santa Claus isn't coming to your house this year." I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. I asked her why she would say that. Lily's next words were a quiet, heartbreaking confession. She told me and Jake that you're on the naughty list. She said you were naughty because you don't believe in family. I was silent, utterly shocked. I could hear Lily crying softly on the other end of the line. The words felt like a physical blow to my chest. I actually stumbled and had to sit down on my couch. Using Santa as a weapon. telling her own children I was bad, telling them I didn't believe in family. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. It wasn't just an argument between sisters. This was a deliberate act to poison my relationship with my niece and nephew. To make them afraid for me, or worse, to make them think poorly of me. The magic of the season I loved so much had been twisted into something ugly. That night, I cried for a long time. But then, a strange calm settled over me. The next morning, I went to work at the Pine Brook Community Center. My job was to coordinate volunteers for all our programs. I loved connecting people who wanted to help with places that needed them. That day, I must have looked like a ghost. My eyes were puffy and my smile was fake. My boss, Dorothy, was a kind woman in her 60s. She took one look at me and steered me into her office. She closed the door and asked me what in the world had happened. I tried to brush it off, but she wouldn't let me. Finally, the whole story spilled out of me. I told Dorothy about the gifts, the argument, and the terrible phone call from Lily. As I spoke, Dorothy's face changed from concern to outright anger. She wasn't angry at me. She was furious on my behalf. "That is the most spiteful, mean-spirited thing I've ever heard," she said firmly. She sat quietly for a moment, thinking. Then she looked at me with a determined glint in her eye. "You know," she said, "the Christmas parade committee could really use someone like you." I was confused. What did the parade have to do with my family drama? Dorothy explained. "That committee is a mess. They argue constantly. Nothing gets done on time. But the parade is the heart of this town's Christmas." She leaned forward. "Paige, you are fantastic at organizing people. You are calm, you're fair, and you get things done. Don't hide from this town because of your sister. Go and organize some joy for yourself." Her words sparked something in me. Revenge wasn't about yelling or fighting. It was about building something she could never tear down. I attended the next parade committee meeting that very week. It was held in a cold room at the town hall. Dorothy was right. It was chaotic. The chairperson, an older man named Mr. Ellis, seemed tired. A woman named Beverly argued about everything. Someone else just complained about the cost of everything. They were discussing the same problem they had last year, not enough volunteer marshals. I sat in the back and just listened. I didn't say a word. I just took notes on my pad of paper. I wrote down every problem, every complaint, every name that was mentioned. For the rest of that meeting, I simply observed. I saw how disorganized they were. There was no agenda. People talked over each other. No one took minutes. Important details, like the permit application deadline, were almost forgotten. I saw the frustration on the faces of the quieter members. They wanted a nice parade, but felt powerless. When the meeting finally ended, I felt a strange sense of purpose. This wasn't just a committee. This was a puzzle. And solving puzzles was what I did every single day at my job. I knew I could help, but I had to be smart about it. I didn't try to take charge. That would have made people resent me. Instead, I became the person who did the jobs no one else wanted. I volunteered to be the one to call the garbage company about extra bins for the parade route. I said I would pick up the traffic cones from the Public Works Department. I offered to stuff envelopes with flyers for local businesses. It was boring, tedious work. But I did it all with a smile. Slowly, people on the committee started to learn my name. They started to say thank you. They started to rely on me. My first real idea came a few months later. I suggested we partner with a local cafe, the Cozy Cup, to provide free hot chocolate at the parade review stand. The committee loved the idea, but no one wanted to ask. So I did. I went to the cafe owner, a friendly man named Tom, and pitched it. I explained it would be great publicity for him. He agreed immediately. He even offered to provide cups with his logo on them. When I told the committee, they were genuinely impressed. It was a small win, but it felt huge. It was the first spark of my own plan coming to life. Then a bigger problem arose. The town council changed the date for our permit application. Mr. Ellis was out of town. The committee was panicking. I calmly took the paperwork home. I used my work computer to fill out every form perfectly. I gathered all the needed insurance documents. I hand-delivered the application to the town clerk's office the next morning, well before the new deadline. When Mr. Ellis returned, he was relieved and grateful. He announced my good work to the whole committee. Beverly, the usual complainer, even gave me a nod. My professional skills were finally being seen. One Saturday in November, I was downtown hanging up parade posters. I was on a ladder, taping a poster to a lamppost. I heard a familiar laugh. It was Brittany. She was walking with a friend from her gym. She pointed at me. "Oh, look," she said loudly to her friend. "There's my little sister and her little hobby. She's so cute trying to save the parade." Her friend laughed. I felt my face grow hot. I carefully climbed down the ladder. I looked right at her and simply said, "Hello, Brittany." Then I picked up my ladder and my stack of posters and walked away. I didn't give her the reaction she wanted. At the first committee meeting in December, Mr. Ellis made a big announcement. His voice was a little shaky. He said that after 15 years, it was time for him to retire as chairperson. He was getting older and the work was too much. The room was quiet. This was huge news. He said the committee would need to vote for a new chair at the meeting on December 10th. A few people immediately suggested Beverly. But then a few others glanced over at me. They didn't say my name out loud, but they looked. My heart did a funny little flip in my chest. After the meeting, Dorothy pulled me aside in the parking lot. "You're going to put your name in, right?" she asked me directly. I hesitated. Beverly had been on the committee for 10 years. She expected the job. Dorothy read my mind. "Seniority doesn't mean competence, Paige. You have ideas. You have respect. You've done the work. Think about it." I drove home that night with my mind racing. Could I actually do this? Did I want to? I thought about Brittany's words, calling it a little hobby. This was my chance to prove it was so much more. I made my decision. I would submit my name for chairperson. But I wouldn't just ask for votes. I would earn them. I spent every evening that week creating a plan. I made a detailed timeline for the next year's parade. I drafted a new, safer route that included more neighborhoods. I designed a system for recruiting and training volunteers. I researched grants to pay for better sound equipment. I put it all in a neat folder. I wasn't just asking for a title. I was applying for a job to serve my town. And I was the best candidate. The night of the vote, December 10th, arrived. The town hall meeting room was full. Every committee member was there. Even some townspeople had come to watch. Mr. Ellis explained the process. First, each candidate would speak. Beverly went first. She talked about her years of service. She talked about tradition. Then it was my turn. I stood up. My hands were trembling, but my voice was clear. I passed out copies of my plan. I spoke about inclusion, about safety, about making the parade a gift to the entire community. I spoke from the heart. When I finished, there was a moment of silence. Then, several people started to clap. Mr. Ellis called for a secret ballot. Small slips of paper were passed around. I watched as everyone wrote down a name and folded their paper. I folded my own blank paper, my stomach twisting into knots. Dorothy collected them all in a basket. She and Mr. Ellis went to a corner of the room to count. The murmur of the crowd filled the air. I couldn't look. I just stared at my hands in my lap. This was it. The moment everything had been leading toward. The counting seemed to take forever. Finally, Dorothy and Mr. Ellis walked back to the front of the room. Mr. Ellis cleared his throat. The room fell completely silent. The votes have been counted, he said. He looked out at all of us. We had 2 excellent candidates. The committee has made its choice. He paused. I held my breath. He smiled a warm, genuine smile and looked right at me. The new chairperson of the Pine Brook Christmas Parade Committee, he announced, is Paige. For a second, I didn't move. I couldn't believe it. Then the room exploded into applause. People were smiling and clapping. Several committee members came over to shake my hand and congratulate me. Beverly looked stunned, but she even gave me a tight, brief hug. Don't mess it up, she muttered, but there was no real meanness in it. Dorothy wrapped me in a big hug. I knew it, she whispered. The local newspaper reporter took my picture. I felt a surge of pure, clean happiness. It wasn't about beating Beverly. It was about the town trusting me with something precious. My little hobby was now a real responsibility. The news was printed in the Pine Brook Gazette that Friday. My photo was right there on the community page. That afternoon, my phone rang. It was Brittany. Her voice was sugary sweet. Paige, I saw the paper. I'm so proud of you, she gushed. I thanked her politely. Then she got to her real point. So, as the new chairperson, you can get my kids a good spot, right? Can they be in the front of the parade? Maybe on the lead float? I took a deep, calm breath. I said, the committee as a group decides the float order, Brittany. But I'll make sure your application is added to the list for review. The silence on the other end of the line was long and deep. It was the sound of a world flipping right side up. The woman she labeled naughty was now officially in charge of the Christmas magic. And that was the only gift I needed.